Okay, here we go. Now we're live. That's much better. Much better. How you doing, Dave? How's it going?
Doing okay. Can you hear me all right?
Oh yeah, can hear you fine, just fine. And Bill, how are you doing this
Oh
evening?
there. Hey, I was just become slightly concerned. So I'm glad that we're okay.
Yeah, everything's fine. I was having a little difficulties getting in myself, so we see how those things work. But how's everybody this evening?
Doing good.
Uh,
Uh, yep.
Dave, any uh, thing from the missus? Any particular subjects that we should delve into right quick?
No, no, she didn't offer anything tonight.
Oh man, okay. I guess
Yeah,
we won't.
last week she was all into Wimbledon, but this week she was quiet.
Oh yeah, the young kid won.
Yep.
Bronny broke through. Beat what's his name?
Djokovic.
Yeah, yeah, you know. So yeah, that's something to behold. But uh, Dave, last week I took you through some subjects. We were talking about the Pirates. We were talking about some different players on the Steelers, and just when I thought the Pirate adventures were over, we hear about this record. What 9 point something, 9.2 mil
Right, right.
for the young man. Last week I was asking you if he was the best choice. Evidently, the pirate organization is willing to go down with him. What is this kid, Aaron Judge?
Well, to get the owner to spend the money, um, he's been kind of stingy before, and I think that's the most money that's ever been paid on a rookie, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, it is a record. That was what 9.2.
Right, 9.2 million. So he is. He had he was both a hitter, catcher, and a pitcher before he transferred to Air Force, and then he focused on pitching. But then one of the articles I read is he's indicating that they're leaving the door open. In terms of will he be able to use his bat when he plays? But right now I think what they want to do is to try to get him into the minor leagues or maybe into one of the fall leagues so that he can start acclimating himself to the professional game.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I didn't know a lot about the kid before, and there were a lot of talk. But hey, uh, when the Pirates open up the checkbook, you have to kind of look out and see.
Yeah, I mean they see something, and so I hope that they're right, and I hope that he stays healthy. A number of years ago, the Nationals had drafted Strasburg, number one,
Yeah,
and he was going to be a phenomenal, very good pitcher, but then he had some injuries over the seasons, had to have Tommy John surgery and things like this. So hopefully, Skenes can stay healthy.
yeah. Dave, we had kind of a throwback last week when Wiz Khalifa threw out the first ball. He said he was all shroomed up. Shades of
Yeah,
Doc, shades of Doc, huh?
Doc Ellis.
Yeah,
Doc
there you
Ellis,
go.
right?
And then,
Well, I think these days, if you want to continue being a Steelers fan, you need to be on shrooms. I'm afraid they're right now they're on track of losing over 90 games. If and they've just been getting hammered. That they have
you
no
mean the Pirates?
the
You
Pirates,
mean,
excuse
yeah.
me. They have no pitching. Um, they have like one legitimate starter, Mitch Keller, and then they have one reliever, and that's it. And McCutcheon, I think, has just come back off of inactive status, but they've been playing a lot of young players, but, they just haven't been rising to the occasion. So the Steelers are really hurting right now. McCutcheon is coming back at a good time, but they need a lot of help.
Yeah. Bill, are you familiar with this young man? Well, of course you
Yeah,
probably
of course.
are.
Fascinating stories about him, and people who are big, I guess you call pitching mechanics wonks, the Tom Houses and others talk about him a great deal. He's apparently rare or different or special or whatever the term you want to use from normal or average or other pitchers of his type. And Paul Davis Skenes is a person that some people think might be on one of the greats of the greats of the greats. El Toro High School, which I know mostly as a football high school. Rob Johnson Sr., the father of the Rob Johnson who went to USC and later played for the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Buffalo Bills, was for many years at El Toro High School. And still they have their quarterback camp on the campus of El Toro High School, where Paul Skenes first began to attract attention. And speaking of football, I mean, the kid's 6'5", 247. He's essentially Ben Roethlisberger. So that's the one thing that he, sort of Pittsburgh-ish about him, is he's a very Roethlisberger kind of guy, at least in terms of his build. And, the transfer portal, as we all know, takes him from the Air Force Academy, where he probably would have had some sort of military commitment to fulfill, or may have had one, now goes to where he is now, at a powerhouse like LSU. Dick Hauser Trophy Award winner, National Pitcher of the Year Award winner, SEC Pitcher of the Year Award, John Olerud Award winner, the College World Series Most Outstanding Player. I mean, he just about had a clean sweep of all the awards that he was eligible to win. So, yeah, of course I'm familiar with him. I mean, some people think he's a, once every 10 to 12 year kind of prospect. Now, I also heard people say that about Todd Van Poppel. I heard people say that about the aforementioned Steven Strasburg. And Ryan Taylor, who unfortunately never pitched never threw a single pitch in the majors. We're all players that I heard those same things about. I have friends who scout baseball. God bless you. How you do that, I don't know. Scouting football is darn near, drives me crazy doing that. And I can watch 1,000 6'5", 17-year-olds throw a baseball 97 miles an hour and have no idea why one of them is going to be better than the other one. So shout out to everyone who somehow scouts baseball, because you guys are the real MVPs. I couldn't scout baseball if literally to save my own life or the life of any of us. So luckily I don't have to. But from the people who talk about spin rate and, strength of secondary pitches and ability to spot pitches and ability to change up and have enough variety second and third times with the lineup, to the people that know what they're talking about, they all say he checks all the boxes.
Well, hey, we'll see, and it'll be good to have somebody in Pittsburgh and at least be competitive. I'd like to see that. It's been a while. When you say Dave,
Absolutely, and I think it's been since 1992 since they've won a playoff game.
Sid Bream, where are you?
And they brought Sid Bream to Pittsburgh of all places, and some of the fans weren't too happy about that.
Bill, the Atlanta Braves Holding Inc. Unveiled a new ownership structure. It's allowing fans to purchase stock in the team. Do you think that other teams should possibly use this as an example to engage their fan base?
Yeah, well, somewhere the Packers are accusing people of swagger jacking them. So it's a cool story. And will it catch on? The answer is probably no. But yeah, it's a cool story. It's fun to talk about. I mean, it'd be cool to see it catch on. The aforementioned Pittsburgh Pirates maybe could use something like that, but but seriously, I don't think it's going to become a big thing. I think it's sort of a, like I said, a cool story, something to talk about. Atlanta has very strong fan support. They're not. That's not a. They're not exactly in trouble. While they may not be the most monetized team in the major leagues, they're going to be okay. I'm not worried about the Atlanta Braves. So, like I said, it's a cool story. It's fun. People can put up their certificates showing they're an owner and all that cool stuff. But I'm not a. I don't think I don't think there's much to it. I think it's more of a cool story than it is an industry trend.
What do you think, Dave?
Well, I mean, I would love to see it because then you start to tie the teams to the city. But I'm actually surprised that Atlanta is able to do that. What? And I'm wondering, do they have a way around if they're being publicly held? Then there's disclosure rules, and that's one of the reasons in the NFL, Green Bay is grandfathered. But no other NFL team would be allowed to do that because then you get too much disclosure of the actual finances of the teams. Frankly, I would love to see that. But for the league, I'm not sure that they're going to be encouraging that.
Yeah. Hey, Atlanta has been known, to innovate, and like you said, like Bill said, it does have a pretty good fan base. So that's might be some place where it would work. Whereas some other places, maybe like Cleveland, it wouldn't. But we'll see. But it is a good story. We'll see how it works out. For those, it's a shame that Demetrius isn't here tonight. He's on the road. But I'd like to get the old man get off my grass opinion on this. Um, well, there are approximately 24 free agents getting ready to make a mark somewhere. But of course, the only one we really care about is Ohtani. Dave, where do you think Ohtani's going to end up? A Dodger, a Yankee, a Met, or somewhere else?
I really don't know. I just don't have a handle on that.
Yeah, the Yankees have put forth, of course, a proposal already. So they're already setting the table. Bill, what do you think?
Well, my initial reaction is the field, someplace else. But I do believe that you'll get really strong, presentations, whatever term you want to use. Both New York and Los Angeles have large Japanese American communities and large amounts of money to throw around. So both those places have at least some of the things that are likely to interest young Mr. Ohtani. He's at the peak of his powers. He is still getting better, which is frightening to say, but we're seeing someone who is essentially sort of simultaneously, Ted Williams and, really what you hope Strasburg might be. Like he's this really interesting amalgam kind of player. And people mention Babe Ruth, but Babe Ruth was a slightly different kind of baseball player. First of all, despite the fact that we think of him as this sort of rotund, almost comical figure, that's most of the photography you've seen of him is late in his career. Despite always being oddly built, young Babe Ruth was actually a pretty darn good athlete. Fielded his position well, even stole a handful of bases early in his career. And Ohtani is not incapable of doing that, but he is essentially a DH who can play. He can play in the field. but he's nothing special in the field. And while he's a good enough athlete, I think maybe they encourage him not to run to preserve his health, I guess. But I think I think the Babe Ruth comparisons are not exactly apt. People do it just because Babe Ruth was for a while a two-way player playing, playing in the outfield on days that he wasn't pitching and pitching, once every 5 days, as it was in those days. But the sub 220-pound Babe Ruth, which is the early in his career, like I said, was Babe Ruth is a guy that stole 123 bases in his career. While that's not a mind-boggling number, I don't know if Ohtani will ever get. Well, I don't know. I shouldn't say we'll ever get to it. He might well, depending on how long he plays, get to 123 stolen bases. But we forget how good some of these guys were, I guess is what I'm saying. But Ohtani is exciting and different and special, and we haven't seen anything quite like him. But like I said, people forget that young Babe Ruth was a darn good athlete. There was a year where there was a couple of years, 4 years where Babe Ruth was double digits in triples. Triples are the hardest hit to come by, not just because you have to have a combination of power and speed to get them, but because sort of things have to fall into your way. Because a lot of times they don't want you to try to get to third. But when you think about the fact that Babe Ruth in a 154-game season managed to have a year where he had 16 triples, a year where he had 11, a year where he had 12, and a year where he had 10, gives you an idea of, like I said, that young Babe Ruth could run despite looking funny doing it. And I don't know if Ohtani's quite that in terms of his ability to leg out. So that's why I'm saying, Babe Ruth and legging out hits. But he did. Ohtani is at 77 stolen bases at year. What year is he in? Year 6? Is it year 6? Hold on, let me think. He broke in 2018. Is that right? 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Yeah, year 6. Okay. So at year 6, he's at 77 stolen bases. So let's say he manages to play. He could get to 123, I guess. So I take it back, Mr. Ohtani. You do have a chance to catch Babe Ruth when it comes to that. I don't think you're catching him on triples, though. I don't think you're going to get there. You're at 28 career triples, and Babe was at 136 career triples. So I don't think you're getting from 28 to 136 before you hang him up. But he's an amazing player. I think it's going to come down to two things. One is comfort, right? He really wants to be comfortable wherever he goes. Beyond just money, beyond just championships. He'd like to win a championship. Every player wants to win a championship. But he said that he wants to be comfortable. Someplace where he feels not just appreciated, because who's not going to appreciate Ohtani? But surely Ohtani's going to be appreciated by anybody. But like it fits him in terms of team culture and things like that. There's places where I don't think he'll be comfortable. So the Yankees can be an uncomfortable place to be a baseball player. That's one reason I'm a Yankees fan. I love for it to happen, but I don't think that's the landing spot for him. I think if he landed in New York, it'd more likely be the Mets. But even that's not the most comfortable place in the world either. I think
Ohtani would definitely not be a Met. He would definitely not be a Met. A Dodger or a Yankee, maybe. Tampa Bay Rays, somewhere around it, maybe like that.
Well, you say the Rays, but the Rays, that's not the Rays style, my friend. The Rays have a giant money free agent in.
I know it's not the Rays style, but like you said, Ohtani is a once in a generational player. And
right, I get, but they have a budget. Unlike some of the teams you mentioned, the Tampa Bay Rays have a budget. I don't know how they afford.
Well, that was going to be my question: is do you see any small market teams even having a chance at them?
I think that the teams that have a chance are teams like the San Francisco Giants, teams like the aforementioned Dodgers and Yankees. So I'd love for him to go to New York, the New York Yankees. I just don't think that's where he ends up. The Texas Rangers threw around a lot of money not too long ago. Now, it didn't really work out. So I don't know if they are, chastened or burned by the experience, and maybe they won't do it again. But I mean, they've had a couple of the highest priced players in Major League Baseball history. And when they signed, obviously Alex Rodriguez's contract, it was the richest contract, in history with like, I think more than $10 million in total value over the last one before it. So maybe 12, some good amount of money was spaced between that contract and any other contract in total value in the history of the game to that point. So they've been unafraid to spend money.
You talk about somewhere where he's comfortable. What about Seattle?
That's a place where he could be comfortable. Once again, an enormous Japanese American community. Second or third. I know it's one of the top 5 or 6 largest. I think it might be 3rd or 4th largest in the country. San Francisco, Los Angeles. So yeah, I think it's in the top 5, maybe 4th or 5th in Japanese Americans. So he'd have a lot of support. They've already had one of their favorite franchise players be a Japanese import, right?
Right.
They love Ichiro Suzuki. So I guess he'll talk to Ichiro if he's taking bids and ask him what it was like to be an icon in Seattle.
Yeah. Just a thought. Dave, I know you don't do a lot of basketball, but LeBron is kind of a universal, and he lives kind of in our area, especially within the tri-state area. So I just want you to kind of think about this question, because I'm going to put it to Bill first. LeBron is going back to his number 23 to honor Bill Russell. And I'm wondering, Bill, what do you think? Do you think that LeBron should have statues in Cleveland and LA when he retires?
Well, why not Miami too? Why not all 3? I mean, what the heck?
Miami won a championship before he got there. The other 2 he brought, well, so did the Lakers. But
I was going to say, wait, guess which teams won more championships without LeBron than anybody? The other places you name. So he could conceivably have, statues at all those places. He was integral to what happened with the Heat. Obviously, he's by far the greatest player that Cleveland's ever drafted in their franchise history. And he's the kid from Akron. So, I mean, I'll be shocked if he doesn't get some sort of permanent recognition in front of that particular location and where they play. It could happen in Miami. He wasn't there a super long amount of time, but it could happen. And, I mean, Los Angeles is a place where I feel like it's the least important to honor him. Not that he hasn't done things there, but there have been a lot of great Lakers, and they've won a lot of titles. So I could see him getting some sort of, recognition. But, I mean, a statue out in front, I feel like that should be reserved for guys that either spent their entire careers, or at least the vast majority of their careers, in the purple and gold.
What do you think, Dave?
Well, the last point that Bill made, it's, like with the Steelers, they got Franco Harris at the airport, statue next to George Washington.
Yeah.
Almost his last year he spent in Seattle, but his viable career was in Pittsburgh. And like with LeBron, I mean, I think that whenever he led Cleveland to their first championship for a long time in any sport, it had been a long time for Cleveland. But then he left. And a lot of the fans are not happy about that.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, what about the fans? What do they want? And I think that if the fans in Cleveland, if the fans in Miami, the fans in LA, if they want to have a statue for him, that's great. Why not? I mean, he's led all 3 of those teams to victories. With Los Angeles going all the way back to Jerry West and all these guys. I mean, they've had so many great players, but I think that you could make a case for Cleveland, but then he left, and the Cleveland fans weren't very happy at the time. But maybe at this point they're ready to say, well, hey, I mean, he's one of their sons. He's an Ohio son, so why not?
Dave, I'm sure you've heard, like everybody else, that LeBron wants to play with his son. That's one of that's on his bucket list. And Bronny is right now in is USC, I believe, right? Dave, do you think that LeBron, considering all the money that he has made, do you think that he would play for the veterans minimum to get an opportunity to play with his son?
If he wants to, why not? And what it reminds me of is a long, long time ago, there was the World Hockey Association, which was the professional hockey league, and I got to see Gordie Howe play with his two sons for the Houston. Houston actually had an ice hockey team. I think they were called the Houston areas. And Gordie Howe was, I mean, he was way, way past his prime, but he was out there on the ice, playing, and that was pretty cool. And so if LeBron wanted to play with his son, why not? Now, in terms of what he gets compensated, well, that's between him and the team, and how much he would want it at that point. I don't know how many years away his son is from actually getting to the NBA, but
I'm still not sure that his son has a game to make the NBA, but we'll see. Bill, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, LeBron, Raymond, Bronny James is, as you pointed out, a 6'2.5", 184-pound two guard who could, I guess, develop into a combo guard-ish kind of player, sort of a very poor man's fat lever. I've watched him. He's a legit. He's a low 4-star. I mean, he's a 4-star because he's LeBron's kid. If he were LeBron, Raymond, Carroll, he'd be a 3-star recruit. But he'd be a high 3 but still a 3-star. He can knock down, jumpers out to the 3-point range with, about 40, just under 40 percentile against, the level companies he played against. It'll be interesting to see how he adapts to playing against bigger guys, which will happen. He's played against some bigger guys because, he played with some of his dad's friends and things like that. But, Uncle Dwayne and other people come over, but consistently playing against people who are bigger and older. His handle will still need to improve. He's a decent enough passer. But I think his best chance, if he does want to play in the NBA, is to be able to turn himself into a point guard who can shoot instead of a shooting guard who can pass. I think that he needs to make that switch.
Don, how you doing this evening?
Doing great.
We were just getting into a couple of questions here, and I was talking about LeBron, and I was asking the guys, do you think that LeBron deserves a statue in LA, Cleveland, or even perhaps Miami? What's your thoughts?
I would say of those, I don't know if he'll get a statue in LA. I mean, well, there's been so many great players go through LA, but probably Cleveland because he's an Ohio. He's an Ohio guy. He did 2 stints with Cleveland, so I can see him getting that done in Cleveland if he gets a statue. But it's possible that 2 to 3. I would say maybe Miami. But I don't know a whole lot about, the Lakers, as far as building statues. But, if they have one for Jabbar and Magic, and Kobe, then maybe they get one for LeBron. But I just don't.
I think Shaq has a statue out in front of the Staples Center too, doesn't he?
I don't know. I've never been to Staples Center, so I don't really keep up.
I'm trying. I've been there a couple of times. I'm trying to think of the four. I know there's 4 statues out in front of there, but I can't think of who they all are. Another question I was asking Don: do you think that LeBron would take the veterans minimum in order to play with his son?
Sure, why not? I mean, he doesn't need the money. I mean, he could take that.
You think? He's only a billionaire. I mean,
yeah. I mean, he could take that money and give it to charity. You know, I mean, that's just, if he was to play with his son, then more power to him.
There's a couple of baseball questions we had, and you might want to share a couple of things here. First of all, we were talking about the Atlanta Braves, and they have a holding company. They where now the fans can actually own stock in the team. Bill, do you think that? Don, do you think that other teams should possibly use this as an example to engage their fan base?
You know, I know Green Bay does that. I think Green Bay is the only major league sports franchise that does that. And as far as I know, it's been a success. So I'm surprised more franchises don't do it. You know,
the NFL doesn't allow it now. They're grandfathered.
Oh, they did? Well,
yeah. Baseball hasn't done. This is kind of the first time that I've heard of it in baseball. So that's kind of why I had the question up there. Don, where do you think Ohtani's going to end up? A Dodger, a Yankee, a Met, or somewhere else?
I would, of course, the Yankees have the money. They always do, the money. But my emotions say, become a Dodger. That's just my pack. But if the Yankees want him, bad enough, he'll go to New York.
Yeah, they've already put in they've already sent some sounding boards to the Angels, so we'll see how that works out. Guys, there's a situation that kind of I'm not really sure what to make of it, and that's this Northwestern situation. Now they fired the coach, Pat Fitzgerald, but they kept the staff. They even promoted the defensive coordinator to the interim head coach. So I'm not sure how this makes sense. If the coach is saying that he knew nothing about it and it was all under, out of his sight or whatever, Don, having played in a major college, we all kind of know that assistant coaches are usually more aware of what's happening with the team than the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about Northwestern firing the head coach for keeping the staff? Don?
Yeah. Oh, I thought the question was still as a question. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot of times, because the position coaches, assistant coaches have more contact with their players. I know when I was playing, I saw Coach McWilliams, all the time. But as far as just develop that relationship, it was my position coach that I, was more familiar with. So, yeah, the assistant coaches usually have a pulse on the team more than I would say the head coach. You do have head coaches who insert themselves. They're a little bit more proactive, I would say. I think Mac Brown was that way at Texas, and apparently he's like that at North Carolina. They love him in North Carolina, so that's good. But I just think that some head coaches are kind of standoffish as far as that goes. I mean, I don't. I just don't see some of these coaches taking their time to stop someone and ask, "Hey, how's school going? How's your mom? How's your dad?" They're out there, but I don't think that's the norm.
What do you think, Dave?
Well, the precedents that I would look at is University of Maryland. Back in 2018, they had a player that died during the spring training. And they started to fire the head coach. He kind of disputed, the response to it and everything. And eventually he was removed and the entire staff stayed. And then coincidentally, Matt Canada, the Steelers offensive coordinator today, he was the Maryland's first-year offensive coordinator. Well, he became the interim head coach. But then the next year, they hired a new coach, and that entire staff was gone. So the precedents I kind of see for keeping the assistant coaches is, hey, you're already past spring training, you're on your way to the preseason, you need some continuity. The reasoning, I think, with the head coach is, where does the buck stop? And the head coach is ultimately responsible, and he's the one that takes the hit. Even if there was another coach that should have known better, well, then the head coach should have nipped that in the bud. I think that's basically what happens here. But again, I would use University of Maryland as the precedence for something like that happening. And that involved the death of a player.
Bill.
Yes.
Your thoughts on this?
So when you get to this point, you've got what was the question again? What was the question again?
We were talking about the Northwestern.
Oh, yeah. So Pat Fitzgerald and once again, Don would know even better than anybody here. I mean, I was a fourth, fifth stringer at a very walk-on at a very small school. And you were at least probably further the chart end at a very different institution. But hazing, indoctrination, Hell Week, whatever. There's something like it in a lot of different organizations. I mean, the military for a long time still has some vestiges. They don't call it hazing anymore, but there's still things that happen in certain units when people join or come into that unit. And there'll still be something going on. I mean, you think nobody's ever been hazed at Alabama, nobody's ever been hazed at Ohio State. There have been things that have happened. I mean, Penn State a few years back had including Micah Parsons, were involved in a hazing dilemma, whatever they had going on at Penn State for a while. So things go on. I get concerned when the coaches say they didn't know what was going on and they might be telling the truth. That's the worst, right? I'd prefer they lie. That they be lying if they say they don't know. I would prefer the coaches to know and to have at least sort of an eye out on it to make sure it doesn't go too far. It's difficult to entirely eliminate these kinds of things because in highly competitive, highly pressurized, all-male environments, you tend to get some form of people proving they belong there, right? Proving they can handle it. And I don't know if it'll ever be wiped out. The only surprise for me is the location. I've been on Northwestern's campus many times. Shout out to my sister, who, of course, is a graduate from Northwestern. It is a beautiful campus. It is a very expensive private school. And though they have a lot of academic programs, some of whom have done very well. But it's not a place where it's not where you think of the typical hazing scandal location. You think about Deep South. You think about especially some of these really, really, really high level programs. And while they've had some good years in Pat Fitzgerald's tenure, this is not the kind of place where you go because football is the center of your existence. If football is the absolute center of your existence, you're not going to Northwestern. You're not going to Stanford. You're not going to Vanderbilt. So that was the only surprising thing. I am very sorry to see Coach Fitzgerald go. I think he was a fantastic coach. I think he was a great man. But I'm always excited to see, young coaches get a chance. And of course, it's a very difficult situation. But we will get a chance to see what David Bronis has to offer. He's been there a few years as a D coordinator, respected as a defensive coordinator, but it's very different when you suddenly have to sit in the big chair.
Yes, sir. It definitely is. Don, the Big 12 Deputy Commissioner, Tim Wisner, said that Texas is leaving to stop losing to Kansas State, and Oklahoma is leaving just to follow Texas. Don, what do you think about this?
Well, Texas beat Kansas State this year, and before last year they had beat them like 4 or 5 straight times. So that guy needs to check his history. Now, Kansas State has always been tough, but Kansas State's also beaten Oklahoma like 3 years in a row. So there's that. And Kansas State actually won the Big 12 last year. So this guy's a fool. Oklahoma is not following Texas. Texas isn't following Oklahoma. They're in a weird ass partnership. They're rivals. They hate each other, but when it comes to money, they're best friends. Yeah. So the one school that's shitting bricks is probably Texas A&M, and to a lesser extent Arkansas.
Dan, Auburn coach Hugh Freeze has said they could play a 2 quarterback system this year. Usually we say when you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. What you're thinking about Auburn and Coach Freeze this year, Don?
Was that to me?
Yeah.
Well, the old adage is if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterback. The 2 quarterback system, I remember when Texas had Chris Sims, Major Applewhite. It pissed off the fan base because you all know that Major Applewhite shouldn't have started. You had a little bit of that with, Chance Mock and Vince Young until Vince Young just took over the position. So you need to find your quarterback and stick with them. And you've had spring training to do that. You have your 2 or 3 days in practice in the fall to do that. You should have a settled starter. So I think one of the things Sark did here at Texas last year was that he settled on Quinn Ewers, over Hudson Card. I think Hudson Card might have been the better quarterback, but that's Sark's decision made, and I respect him for making that decision. So Freeze needs to find a quarterback, stick with it, and have that backup ready in case there's a fall in production or an injury.
What do you think?
I've never been a fan of the 2 quarterbacks. It's not.
What do you think, Dave? We tried that a couple of times up there at Pitt, and it didn't work. I've never seen a situation where it was really that successful, but maybe you have another example. What's your thoughts, Dave?
Well, I think that some schools have tried it, but I think what you run into is continuity. And, what is your team? And if you're switching quarterbacks every series or having one play one half, the other play the other half, well, then you have the difficulty of the continuity. Just some simple things like the center snap to the quarterback. Each quarterback is a little bit different in terms of taking their snaps from the center. and then also the timing with the receivers. So I think what Don said. Hey, you got plenty of time to identify who's the guy that you're going to go with, and that's what you do, barring, as Don said, injury or lack of performance. But I would say continuity says that you go with one.
What do you say, Bill?
Well, I've had a chance to see both guys. And, of course, Peyton Thorne is from the northwest suburbs. Went to Naperville Central High School. I've seen him play when he was in high school. Most of Penn State. I saw him in person when he played Penn State. Watched Penn State versus Northwestern up close and personal. I was really more there to watch Kenneth Walker III. But I did watch some of Peyton Thorne. He lost his job at one point to, I think, Rocky Lombardi, who also ended up transferring. He's experienced. I think the more talented player is Robbie Ashford, who I've also seen a little bit of. I'm not 100% sold on him, but I just think that there's more there to work with. A kid from the legendary machine that is Hoover, Alabama High. Of course, started his career at Oregon. And when I sort of joke about the trade, it wasn't a trade, obviously, but when Knicks went one way, Ashford went the other. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out for him. But I don't know. I wouldn't be playing two quarterbacks, but I'd probably try to get Ashford on the field. And I'd want Ashford to prove he couldn't be the guy, because what I've seen from Peyton Thorne makes me feel like he should not be your starter.
Bill, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey calls for a national standard for NIL. He says that only Congress can resolve these NIL issues. These issues started with Congress, though, Bill. What's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that is an interesting way of putting it. It's like saying, well, the arsonist set the fire. Let's let the arsonist be in charge of dealing with the fire. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, sure. I mean, it sounds good when I guess you say it, but it doesn't make any sense. First of all, do you really want Congress involved with regulating your sport more? Okay, cool. That always works out well. People say these little smirky, snarky, whatever things, because they're soundbitey and they get quoted and whatever. But it's goofy. It's silly. It doesn't mean anything. And conferences are going to work this out. That's what's going to happen. The conferences are going to work it out. And are you going to end up with a whole kind of patchwork quilt kind of regulation because of it? Yes. Yes, you will. But guess what? That's how college football's always been. There's differences of all sorts that sometimes don't make sense about transfer, about, name something. Conferences are still very distinct from each other when it comes to a bunch of different things. So why should NIL be any different? Why should NIL be different from all the other hundreds of different differences from conference to conference to conference about what you can and can't do? And I think it's frankly much ado about nothing. I think NIL is certainly, I shouldn't say nothing. Let me rephrase that. Not much ado about nothing. NIL is certainly not nothing. NIL is important. It affects the landscape of the game. Don't get me wrong. But not that long ago, we saw Cincinnati play in the national championship game, right? So it's not the most important. It's not the deciding factor. But yes, it does tilt the field at times. But conferences, that's where it's going to happen.
Do you agree, Dave?
I have a little bit of a different take, but probably I'm too old-fashioned. But at one point, college football was almost eliminated. It was almost outlawed, literally outlawed, in the United States.
Yep.
And that's why the NCAA was created. Okay, because there were too many deaths. People getting killed playing the game, and they needed to standardize the game. And for the longest time, the NCAA was the one that kind of bridged between the conferences and provided like uniform eligibility rules. How many years can you remain eligible to play and all this kind of stuff. And they were basically neutralized, is my take on this NIL deal. To me, I think that college football, if you want to have uniformity in the competition, you have to re-empower the NCAA. And they need to be able to weigh in on that. Now, I believe it was a court case that got the NIL moving. I don't think it was an act of Congress, but it was a court case. But I think that the NCAA needs to be re-empowered. That's why that organization exists. But right now I feel that they've been neutralized.
Yeah. Well, it was originally a court case that brought it to the attention, I believe. Don, what's your take?
Well, my take is, if you go back to Greek mythology, there's a concept of Pandora's box. And once Pandora's box is opened, so when they allowed like the portal and NIL, those are things that's going to be very hard to walk back. Last thing you want is government get involved. No, Congress, whatever. Congress, they sent like missing some like $20 billion to Ukraine that got lost, and you expect them to regulate the college football? Screw that. I'm one of these people. Less government is the best government. So keep Congress and all that shit out of the sport I love most.
I hear you, Don. I'm kind of with you. The last thing I think we need is government involved in sports, but we'll see how that works out. Well, Don, I guess the wait is over. The search is over. D-Hop is signed with the Titans. He's getting a 2-year, $26 million contract. $32 million of you can get up to $32 million with incentives. I think the first season he earns $12 million, I believe it is. But people were talking about him going to the Patriots. We had mentioned the Titans, the Chiefs. But Don, was this all about the money when you look at it? I mean, he probably could have he definitely could have went to the Patriots for a little less money. He could have possibly went to the Chiefs. I'm not exactly sure what was the holdup there, but what do you think? Was it all about the money when you look at the 2 years, $26 million?
So when you're getting that kind of money, it is about the money to a large extent, because you said he could go to the Patriots for a little bit less, but that money, in New England's going to get the hell taxed out of it. Texas does not have a state income tax, and our taxes are low. Our standard of living is pretty high. That's why people are moving to Texas, and so I think that's good. And if you can make $2 million more, playing in Houston, that's nice. So yeah, of course.
Well, he's playing in Tennessee. He's with the Titans.
Tennessee doesn't have a state income tax either.
Yeah. Okay.
In Tennessee is another state where they have a lot of economic growth, especially around that Nashville, Franklin area.
Yeah. A lot of there's a few fighters around there too.
I got my Oilers thing going.
Yeah. What do you think? Yeah. What do you think, Dave?
I think it's always driven by money, and part of it is on the player's side and what he's willing to accept. The other part is on the team's side and how much cap space they have. How much can they afford to spend? and what percentage of their cap of their pool are they going to invest in a player? And I guess Tennessee and D Hop, they found common ground there.
I guess, Bill, I'm looking at the roster, and Tannehill. I mean, I understand. You got Derrick Henry back there. The running back. You had a decent wide receiver core that's definitely made better with the addition of D-Hop, but do you trust Tannehill?
Do you trust Ryan Tannehill? Whew. I mean, if I were choosing an NFL quarterback who had to make a throw to save my family being held hostage, I would begin to make arrangements for, following the wishes of their will. He is a legitimate NFL quarterback. He's a top 25 NFL quarterback, maybe even maybe not quite top 20, somewhere between 20 and 25, in my opinion. At his very best, he was a top 20 quarterback, but that was a couple seasons ago. It was funny when he and Mariota were together because it's like seeing, the Asian Pacific Islander version of Tannehill and the original Tannehill. He is an athletic guy with a decent arm who's particularly good off play action. Struggles at reading the middle of the field, even at this late date in terms of his development. Can sometimes feather the ball, but doesn't always place it exactly where you want it. It has above average arm strength, and then kind of average to below average everything else. But he deserves to hang around the league for a couple more years.
Bill, tight end Evan Ingram gets a 3-year extension from the Jags. He got a $41.25 million contract with $24 million of it guaranteed. Bill, how important was it for the Jags to sign Ingram rather than tag him?
Well, two things. It gives you more flexibility. You can do other things. I mean, the franchise tag, though it can be advantageous, is a bit of a poison pill. It was designed to be a poison pill. Most teams would prefer not to use it, and since you can only use it once, they want to make sure if they are using it, it's on a player that they really have to use it. The Giants had to bring back Saquon Barkley. So situations like that are perfect for the franchise tag.
What do you think there, Dave?
Well, what it does is now they have him for 3 years, 3-year contract, right? And so now they have them, and if they've projected their salary cap well, that's a position that they don't have to worry about, or a player in a position that they don't have to worry about. If they tag him, well, now he plays, and then he's a free agent. And if they want to keep him, if they want to retain his services at a cost that they're willing to afford, I think that they're better off with the 3-year contract.
What do you think, Don?
I agree. A 3-year extension is not a bad thing. I think that, the Jags are going to be a little bit better this year than they were last year if the predictions are right. So I think it's good for all involved, to be honest.
Okay. Don, this year happens to be the contract year for Jonathan Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Don, do you think that Taylor is going to be next year's running back casualty?
Well, it all depends on what kind of year he has. If he's, averaging, above 4.4 yards a carry, he'll probably be back. it's just going to see, how that. I think they had to do some readjustment on the offensive line, so it might take some time to gel. But I think, he's still, to me, he's still a very good running back. So, if he has a good year this year, he'll probably be back. We'll see.
What do you think, Dave?
Well, and we'll probably be talking more about this when we talk about Saquon, but there's this whole thing with the fungibility of running backs. And we, Monday night on our Clubhouse Steelers Town Hall, we had a long discussion about the running back situation. And it seems that a lot of the running backs, Najee Harris and others, are kind of banding together saying, hey, we're getting ripped off. We're not being paid enough. And the difficulty is that with the running back position, you get a rookie in his rookie contract, and if he can perform nearly as well as a veteran, well, then why sign the guy to a second contract? Just draft another running back in the second round and pay them cheap. And I think I'm trying to think of who posted it on Twitter, but one of the players posted a little factoid where the average kicker is making a little over $2 million a year, and he compared that to the average running back making less than $2 million a year. Now, it's a little bit of an unfair comparison because there's only one kicker per team, and you have anywhere from 3 to 5 running backs on a team, where a couple of those may be on their rookie contract where they're only making $750,000 a year. They're making the league minimum, which could drive that average down. But it just really comes down to when they're ready, when he's in his contract year, how much is he demanding? And right now, the running backs' salaries are pretty low. And if going back to Le'Veon Bell back in 2017-18, if he had taken the Steelers deal, now they didn't guarantee everything, but they have a good track record in honoring their contracts. He would have been making $14.5 million a year. That was back in 2017. Now you're getting Joe Mixon. I think he signed for what, $9 million a year. So
He took
the
an
running back
extension too, right? I believe.
What's that?
I think he took an extension too.
Right. Yeah, he just signed another contract, but not for a whole lot of money. And so the running back position, this is a whole, and I guess we'll get into this with Saquon Barkley, but there is a chance that the Colts may not sign him, extend if he demands too much.
Bill, you still with us?
Yeah.
What do you think about Jonathan Taylor? This being his contract year, do you think that he's going to be next year's running back casualty?
I think as long as he's healthy, yes. I think the offensive line is going to be better. And with the addition of, we talk about 2 quarterbacks, but I think they're going to bring in Anthony Richardson in certain package situations. Once again, barring injury, he'll just see package duty, but I think he'll be an impactful package player. Even if he just gets, 4, there's all kinds of things that come into play. But, I feel like as long as he stays there, and the market for quarterbacks, even fairly young ones, once you get on that first contract, is you look for a bargain with the second deal if you did spend up on the first one.
Bill, does the Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts have to at least get back to the NFC Championship for last year not to be considered a fluke?
So I think the short answer, you said, could the Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts do what again?
Does he have to get at least back to the championship in order for last season not to be considered a fluke?
Well, I don't think that was a fluke, but I think that it will solidify in people's minds that he's a top 6 type quarterback. if they have a really good year and he plays well, but they just end up being knocked out earlier in the playoffs, it will leave that question still open. Now, I think it's a silly way to decide what you think about quarterbacks because your offensive line could be bad. All kinds of things can mean. Matt Stafford was Matt Stafford for a long time. He goes to a better situation, he wins the Super Bowl. So it's a silly way to me to try to figure out what a player is by looking at team success.
What do you think, Don?
Well, kind of building what Bill just said, you know, he could have a great year. He could have better stats this year than he had last year, but you know what? The defense gives up, 30 points a game, and they end up with the worst record. So I think that's kind of a strange standard to be holding a quarterback to because he can play lights out and still, there's 23 other people that have to pull their weight, or I'm sorry, 21 other people. So that's my only thing. I think Jalen Hurts is, he's a top tier quarterback, and as long as he starts using his brains, like maybe I shouldn't run this play because he's still young. He can run, but eventually he's going to have to stay in the pocket and throw. But he does a good job at that. He wins. So I think his best years are still ahead.
Dave, what do you think?
Well, I agree with both Don and Bill. I mean, context matters. And if he's performing, look at Dan Marino. He went to one Super Bowl, didn't win it, but he's probably one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever played. If you watched him throw the ball. And so, he just didn't have enough tools around him in order to get over the hump. And so I think with Jalen Hurts, I think what's going to determine whether he's considered a fluke or not is what his performance is, not the team's performance.
Okay. All right. Purposely, I wanted you to start this one off, Dave, since you had brought it up first. We're talking about no deal for Saquon. And strangely enough, I haven't heard anything from Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones got all his money. We talk about, quarterbacks like, Josh Mahomes and Tom Brady, making team-friendly deals. Dave, do you think that perhaps the Giants quarterback should have taken a more team-friendly deal to help keep his running back?
Well, that's not his responsibility. His responsibility and his agent's job is to get him as much money as he can. And it's really a organizational issue. It's the management of the cap. And I would be looking at the Giants management of the cap if it turns out that they simply can't afford to pay Saquon Barkley. So I don't think it's the quarterback's fault. The Giants general manager and whoever's working their cap issues needs to do a better job.
Dave, do you think that Saquon will play in week 1? He's threatening to hold out the season.
He had a pretty salty video there.
Yes, he did.
and I get it. I mean, I would be upset. I mean, he sees himself as a big contributor to the success of the Giants. And he doesn't feel like he's getting compensated for that enough. And now, they've tagged him. He hasn't signed the tag yet. I hope he doesn't do a Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell just apologized to the Steelers fans. 6 years too late, but he just apologized just a couple days ago, saying he should have never left. And so I hope that Saquon Barkley kind of grits his teeth, signs the contract, plays out the season, and then resets himself. Now the problem is that the way the CBA is that they can franchise him, tag him a second time, because I believe this is the first tag.
Right. This is the first tag.
Now it'll go much higher, for the next one. But again, that's not going to make it. It's those tags. I mean, it really that's going to leave a salty taste in Saquon's mouth. So I hope that he does play. Maybe he'll skip out a game or two. That's what I was hoping was going to happen with Le'Veon Bell, way back in the day. And he kept on teasing a little bit that he was coming back and never did. But I wouldn't wait too long, because missing half a season or a season, that's I don't think it's football's the type of game where you can just bounce back and after sitting out a whole season.
What do you think, Bill?
You're asking about what I thought about.
No deal for Saquon.
Or any other running backs. Yeah,
but no support from Daniel Jones either.
Well, Daniel Jones.
He got his $42 million.
You talk about falling upwards, right? The next time someone tells you that, there's no such thing as like white privilege, just show them Daniel Jones. He is a fascinating study. Nice young man, right? Very nice young man. Great personality, super high character, good student, went to Duke. Athletic, right? Runs in the low 4.6s. Tough, can take a hit, and he has improved dramatically. Hats off to Brian Dable. He dramatically improved from the year prior to last year. However, that doesn't change the fact that his ceiling is Mariota-esque, right? He's probably about as good as he's going to get. He can still refine certain things, but he's what I call a restrictor plate quarterback. He'll let you go pretty fast, but once you get to a certain speed, once you get to a certain ways forward, once you get to a certain place, he will slow you down. He will cut off your flow. And I don't dislike him as a person. I don't dislike him even watching him as a player in college. There were things that I liked, but I didn't see him as a first rounder. I didn't think he'd be a long-term starter. I thought he'd be one of those guys who was sort of Hoyer, Jacoby Brissett, like one of those guys who can get hot, can get on a roll, can help you win some games, even during a practical season, part of a season, things like that. But him being the guy in a full-on, whatever. So, yeah, unfortunately, if you're running back in the NFL, this is the way it is. This is the new normal, is people getting all they can out of you for 3, 4, 5, whatever years, and then moving on from you, sometimes rather unceremoniously.
Yeah, Fournette is without a job, and he's only 28 years old. You got Zeke, you got quite a few
Dalvin
guys.
Cook.
Yeah. Bill, do you think Saquon will play in week 1? Or do you think he'll sit out?
Oh, yeah, he'll play again.
No, I said week 1. Do you think
week 1. I think he'll end up playing week 1. I think he'll toy with the idea of sitting out, but he doesn't have any leverage. So even if he decides not to play, I don't think he gains anything other than not playing. That's unless that's seen as a win. It's not like they're on the precipice of winning an NFL championship, like the Super Bowl situation with Emmitt Smith and the Cowboys, where he's an incredibly important player. He is the straw that stirs the drink. He is, the queen on the chessboard. Incredibly important to them. But teams know that no matter how good a running back is, even if you might not be able to replace him with elite production, you can replace him with average production, which will hurt you some, but it allows you to operate within your team structure and budget in a way that some other things don't.
Don, what's your thoughts? I know, like Dave was saying, if it's not up to Daniel Jones or it's up to the organization. But when you look at what Travis Kelce's making compared to what he could be making. Look at what Patrick Mahomes is making compared to what he could be making. Sometimes you have to take one for the team. Don, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I get all that. The thing we have to think about Barkley is that he's a running back, good running back, but the shelf life of an NFL running back is not. You got an X number of years, and so he has to think about finances, and sometimes it's good to just get the good money and not go after the great money, if that makes sense. But that's just my take.
Don, do you think that Saquon will play in week 1?
I think so. I think common sense will enter his head, and he will be there.
Don, let's talk about your boy Dak. Dak says, I know who I am, and I won't have 10 interceptions this year. He said 4 or 5 of his interceptions were due to tip balls or wide receivers not being in the right place. So he says just that would cut his interceptions in half. Don, are you taking the over or the under 10 interceptions?
Well, he's not wrong. I know several of those interceptions were tipped at the line of scrimmage, or but he did misfire a few, and so he had to take that into consideration. You gotta take what comes. When they do the stats, after game, they don't say, well, this interception really didn't count because it was tipped, or this interception didn't count because the wide receiver ran the wrong route. It's just down as interception. That's on the quarterback. So, he'll probably have double-digit interceptions for whatever reason. Even the great ones have double-digit interceptions. Because you're playing 16 games.
17.
17, yeah. You make the playoffs more. So, if you throw, 10 or 12 interceptions, you can still be a great quarterback and have that happen. So I'm going to say he'll be over 10.
Don, was Tony Pollard wise to sign the tag back in March?
Well, when you get tagged with that franchise label, that can be a double-edged sword. I think in Pollard's situation, I think that was a good thing, considering where he came from and who he's playing against and how hard he's worked. So, I'm looking forward to seeing him play this year.
Bill, what do you think? Do you think that Dak is going to throw over or under 10 interceptions this year?
I'm going to say under.
Oh, you see, okay. What do you see that the rest of us don't?
I think he ends up around 30, 38 touchdowns. About, I'm going to say 3,657 yards passing. I think he rushes for another 288 yards, rushes for another 4 touchdowns.
And how many interceptions will he have?
I'm going to say 7.
7.
Wow.
Don, Bill, do you think that Tony was wise to sign his tag back in March?
Well, if you're fairly confident that you either won't face that player or won't have to root for that player, then sure. But the NFL is an uncertain place, so I tend to avoid doing those types of things for that reason.
What did you think, Dave?
On the interceptions, or
on both, over or under 10? And do you think that Tony was wise to sign the tag back in March?
Okay. Well, with the interceptions, I think he's played 7 seasons, and 1 season was cut short with the injury. So there were six seasons where he played 12 or more games, and 3 seasons he was over.
Yes.
And 3 seasons he was 10 or less. So I'm going to do a push. I'm going to say that he hits right on 10. And basically, it's a 17-game season. And yeah, he, as Don described, he's saying, well, there were some tip balls and things like this. Well, that happens in the game. I mean, and 10 interceptions in a 17-game season that's not disastrous, especially if he's putting up 38 touchdowns like Bill described. I mean, that's not a bad ratio right there. So I'm going to say a push, and he'll hit 10 on the dot in the regular season.
And what about Tony Pollard?
Yeah, with the tag, I guess that really depends on the individual circumstances. Now, for some of the players that are looking to score a contract where they have a 3 or 4, 5-year contract with a lot of guaranteed money, probably not good. Maybe in his case, it's like, hey, let me play this out, and then I'll go after the big money next year. He's betting on himself. So, we'll see.
Okay, all right. Let's see. Bill, you want to talk about the Jets a little bit?
Sure, why not?
It seems that ayahuasca has made the Jets the team under the most. Do you think that ayahuasca has made the Jets the team under the most pressure in the NFL? And it came out later today that Breece Hall is not going to be ready for week 1. As a matter of fact, I think he's on the PUP list. Bill, should the Jets pursue Dalvin Cook and put less pressure on Hall to get back?
Well, everyone should pursue Dalvin Cook, or at least if you have pretenses, if you think you can win it all. But the running back marketplace is not what you think it is. And partially because of that is why he's even in the situation he's in now. That once again, the perception that you can find running backs are just there. They're like airplane peanuts. It's nice when you find them, but you could do without if you had to. So he's in a situation where I think he wants to go to a contender. So the list includes teams like the Chiefs. The list includes teams like possibly Washington. The list includes teams like, who in there is.
Well, we talked about the Jets. So
we did talk about the Jets, yeah. I'm thinking about other teams that have the ability to sort of absorb his energy as he steps in. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of excitement around the Jets, and I do think they have some good players on defense. They have an emerging superstar in Garrett Wilson, who we talked about earlier. If Aaron Charles Rodgers is healthy the entire season, they should have one of the more productive offenses on that side of the continental divide, like on that side of the, East/Midwest part of the country. It can be his while he roots some things out. But I would never recommend him, no matter how much I believed in my child, my daughter, whatever, either one, to do that. Doesn't feel tremendously healthy.
Don, what do you think about your boy ayahuasca? Do you think that he's put the Jets under the most pressure in the NFL? And do you think that now that they've put Breece Hall on the PUP list, that they should possibly pursue Dalvin Cook?
Well, pressure is usually created when you have high expectations, and I've never seen the Jets as having high expectations. I know they have, Mr. Shroom guy, New Age,
Aaron Charles Rodgers, yeah,
yes,
ayahuasca.
So and now that Hall is not going to be, ready for a while, I just think that the bar set low. Anything they win is going to be gravy. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think there's that much pressure just because the expectations aren't there. They're putting house money now, so they can take risks and gambles, and hopefully it pays off. I will say this: I think the Jets will be one of the more entertaining teams to watch, just because of all the stuff going on.
What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I think Ayahuasca, as you call him, actually takes the heat off the team because the attention is going to be on him. And so I think that may actually loosen up the rest of the team and maybe rally around him. In terms of should they pursue Dalvin Cook, I think that the Jets have some cap money to play with.
Yeah.
And if they do, why not? If he's willing to come over there, and if Aaron Rodgers can, he was controversial at times at Green Bay, but he was a big team leader with Green Bay, and there were players that rallied around him. And so if he can get the Jets to rally around him, you bring somebody in like Dalvin Cook, maybe they'll be more competitive than people thought at the beginning of the season.
Okay.
And I believe that aren't they going to be on the TV show there?
Hard Knocks.
Hard Knocks, right?
Yeah.
So even more entertainment.
Yeah. Supposedly there's a few stipulations. They're not going to let Hard Knocks into a lot of the places, but we'll see how that works out. I remember back in the day when part of the Hard Knocks was watching those guys get their dreams crushed, having to go and turn their playbook in. Now they're a little more sympathetic, and they don't want to do that. But I remember when that was part of the show to see who was going to get cut. Bill, you still with me there?
Yeah, roger that. Thumbs up.
Okay. We're talking about the Bills here. Defensive tackle Ed Oliver gets 4 years, $68 million with 48.2 guaranteed. Oliver was the 9th overall pick in the 2019 draft.
Out of Houston.
Yep. They have a new running back. Delvin's younger brother is going to take over at running back 1. And, of course, we all know that Josh Allen was the leading receiver last year. Rusher. Bill, how important is it for the Bills to get back to the AFC Championship with all this talk about Aaron Rodgers and Tua and so forth? Did you get me, Bill?
Yes, you said.
How important is it for the Bills to get back to the AFC Championship?
Well, it's extremely difficult. If the Bengals are even close to what they used to be, we just talked about the Jets. I think Miami might be even better than the Jets, even with the addition of Aaron Charles Rodgers. You still have to worry about. What if the Ravens are improved? The South is probably the one AFC division I don't look there and see anybody as a real threat. Obviously somebody has to make the playoffs, but even the team that wins, I don't think is a real threat. I think the threat and who and what that team is, here or, on this side of the pond. And I think it's going to take a while. He seems to be a person who's very reserved and, frankly, gives, get the term, that comes to mind is, cleanliness or whatever. It's a very clean situation. I think that they have a lot of challenges they want to get back. And their window isn't closing yet, but it's not opening any wider. I'll put it this way. For the foreseeable future, it will either narrow or stay the same. Dave,
I see you shaking your head there. You agree with Bill?
When he's talking about the window, Josh Allen is 26, so he should be right in his prime. This is prime time now for the Bills. So, to me, if the clock wasn't ticking, it's ticking now, tick-tock. And so I don't think that they necessarily have to win the conference this year, but they need to be continuing to improve. And they within the next 2 to 4 seasons, they have to be knocking on the door, because they're right in the middle of Josh Allen's prime years.
Don, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I can definitely see them in the Super Bowl the next 2 years. They have all the ingredients. I think Josh Allen is going to have to. Like I was talking about Jalen Hurts, he's going to have to know when to throw the ball, not to run it. You never want your quarterback to be your leading rusher, and that's what he was last year. That might be good for a season or two, but in the long term, that's not a good solution. So, yeah, they just need to do some fine tuning on their team and their roster, and they'll be going head to head with probably Kansas City for the AFC title.
Okay. Don, Kyler says that I'll be coachable, but we have to look in the mirror if things aren't working. Don, do you think that Kyler Murray and the Cardinals will be able to turn things around this season? And what do you think about his remarks?
Well, Kyler Murray, going back to his 7th grade year in middle school, is one of the most successful quarterbacks of all time. He did not lose a game until the Texas beat him his junior year.
Yep.
So he's got that chip on that, not the chip. He's got some arrogance to him, and he's learned that in the NFL, everyone's good in the NFL. He's not playing at Allen High School or University of Oklahoma, where he's playing in the NFL. He's playing the big boys. So there's a lot of film on him. They figured him out. This is that stage of his career where his height is kind of becoming a little bit of an issue. I think he's about 5'10". So he's another one that used to just be able to tuck it and run. Well, you can't do that anymore, and it's starting to show. So he needs to eat some humble pie, and he doesn't need to just say, I'm coachable. He needs to prove he's coachable.
Dave, what do you think?
I'll be coachable. Does that mean he picks and chooses when he's going to be coached? I don't know. I think that the Cardinal season is going to be interesting. I don't think that they're going to go very far. Maybe I'll be all wrong. But I just don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see them getting more than 6 wins this year, but we'll see. Bill, what's your thoughts?
Well, the good news is they may well be in a premium draft position again. So they might have opportunities to find some really good players in the upcoming draft. And that's not all because of Kyler. They are another team that's built weirdly in terms of how the roster is constructed. It's a blend of really, really young players and really, really old players and not a lot of guys in between. And that's not really what you want. That's not an ideal situation. It's like the Lakers, right? Where it's really, really old, really, really young, and not a lot of guys. You would like a bunch. The Chiefs are sort of what you want, where you have a bunch of guys who are between the ages of 24 and 31 who are the best players on the team. What you don't want is where the best players on the team are either like 21 or 35, right? That's not really what you want. So they need Kyler to mature a lot and quickly. The game has come very easily to him for a long time. And he's at times admitted that the game's always come easy to him. It's come very easily to him. He feels like he does. He said at one point, "I don't have to work as hard as some people to learn." Dude, maybe you're wrong about that. Well, I guess we'll see. But being an NFL quarterback is, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I'll just say it. I think it's the most difficult thing in sports to do, at least in team sports. I think the most difficult thing to do in team sports is play quarterback in the NFL. It has such great mental demands, and the physical dimension isn't quite as demanding or as difficult as it once was back. I mean, when I first started watching the game, I'd see Paul, Burt Jones drop back in the pocket and get hit in the small of his back with the truck transaxle. Was play on, right? No problem with that. So the game has changed a little bit. I mean, Dan Pastorini. I mean, he'd get high load, like somebody come flying in and like hit him around the neck while someone was hitting him in the knees. Get up, it was no biggie. So the game has changed. It's a little easier physically to play. In fact, it's probably physically the easiest it's ever been to play because intentional grounding outside of the pocket is legal. There's a strike zone that shrinks every year, it seems, on what part of the quarterback you are. You can actually strike them. If you roll into a quarterback's legs, it's a flag. I mean, you can't land on them. Can you imagine what Dick Buckers would say if you throw a flag because his body weight came down on a quarterback? Oh my gosh. Woo! Is it after dark? It is. He would never stop cursing at you. He would be cursing at you forever, in perpetuity. So Kyler Murray has all the talent in the world. He, once again, was a first-round draft pick in 2 different sports. He's incredibly mobile. He has a very strong arm for a guy his size. He is smart. Not as smart as he thinks he is, but he is smart. And if he does work hard, if he does truly embrace the grind, as the kids say, and learns the offense and learns the intricacies of the offense, not just knows it to pass the test, right? Don't be that guy in chemistry who doesn't need to take chemistry, who just needs to get a B. Embrace it. Learn it like you need this, like you want to be a chemist, right? If he has that approach to learning and building his skill set, he'll figure out how to counteract the things they've tried to do to slow him down, and he'll be great again. But if he doesn't, if he continues thinking he's going to get away with it because of his talent, like I said, welcome to 4-13.
Bill, the Seahawks secondary, will they continue to be the strength this coming season? And will the Seahawks have a feature back or running back by committee?
Okay. Yes, kind of, and yes. I think is the answers to your question. So they would like to find a guy. They really would. They'd like to have a guy who's like beast mode, a guy who's like even Chris Carson for a brief and shining moment, where that's the guy, where that's the one that you can depend on. But until they find that guy, they're going to do the committee thing. I don't think that's something they so much are doing because they like it or because they want to. Right now, it's because they aren't sure. They aren't completely sure of who they have amongst their. They have a lot of running backs. They have a good number of running backs, and they like some of them. In fact, I know they do. I know for a fact they like some of them.
Kenneth Walker, the kid that they just drafted. Yeah, they have a few that they like.
Right. They have a good number of running backs, and they're going to give them all a chance to become the guy. I think you'll see, somebody will get 17 touches one game and then get 8 the next, that kind of thing, while they sort of experiment a bit and then lock in eventually. I think they will. But Kenneth Walker III is going to be the guy. Zach Charbonnet will get some work on third down and things like that. DJ Dallas is a tremendous special teamer. Kenny McIntosh is another guy who's sort of does some things that Charbonnet can do, but isn't as fast, isn't as athletic. So he's a less dynamic version, smaller and less dynamic version of the same guy, which I don't know if that's a great thing. And then I like Bryant Koback more than most. I think he's better than people realize, but I don't know if he'll even make the team. The secondary, it's not quite the Legion of Boom, partially because you can't really do the things anymore that they got away with in those days.
Okay.
But
go ahead.
I think the good news is that between Jamal Adams, the edge safety, right, the guy who has led the team in sacks before, which is interesting, when you have a safety who's led your team in sacks. They needed that to change. They needed him to not lead the team in sacks. So hopefully one of their pass rushes emerges, because that's the thing that worries me most is their pass rush. But between Quandre Diggs and Adams holding it down at the safety position, between Kobe Bryant and guys like Arquan Bush, Jarek Reed, and Ty Akoto sort of fighting it out for the nickel spot, I think Kobe Bryant holds that down. And then, of course, the amazing pickup out of UTSA, the very special Tyreek Woolen, who has a chance to be truly great, being paired up with Devin Witherspoon, who is a tremendous young corner. They have a chance to be very, very good. Now, the difference is they don't have – none of their safeties resemble in any way either Earl Thomas or Bam Bam Cam Chancellor, but they have really good corners.
Dave, what's your thoughts?
With the I don't really know about the secondary. With the running backs, who's going to be their featured back? I don't know, and so I think that the default answer is that they're going to have to use a committee, at least to start the year. So I don't think that they have a featured back right now.
Well, Kenny Walker was until he got hurt last year. They're hoping that he snaps back. But Don, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think probably the last 10 years, Seattle has always been very solid in the secondary, the whole Legion of Boom and all that. So I think they'll continue. They might have a little bit of a drop off, but I like the personnel they have back there. Talking about running back by committee, I think that's a lot better idea sometimes than having two quarterbacks, which you don't see in the NFL really, but we talked about that earlier. But I don't see the Seahawks being really a contender this year, but I think they will pull off some upsets, win some games they shouldn't win.
Okay. Don, the Raiders failed to give Josh Jacobs a long-term deal. Do you think that Josh Jacobs will sign his franchise tag? And with the disgruntled wide receiver Adams, and now not signing Josh Jacobs to a long-term deal, do you think the Raiders are setting Jimmy G up for failure?
Well, I don't think they're necessarily setting him up for failure. I think that, he has some other issues outside his on-field performance, one of which is staying healthy for a complete season. But, as far as, Josh Jacobs goes, I think, again, running back position, right now, if you're running back in the NFL, sometimes you got to take what you can get. And I think that, it's time to, make your money while you can, because, as I mentioned earlier, the shelf life of an NFL running back is probably the shortest shelf life of any player, any position. So I think it'll work out for him.
You think he'll sign the franchise tag then?
I think so. My gut feeling says yes.
Okay. Bill, what do you think? Is Josh Jacobs going to sign the franchise tag?
Yeah. So $10.9 million, which may sound like a lot of money to you and I, but it is a bit of a slap in the face for a guy that just led the NFL in rushing, and is still fairly young, but he's seen a fairly high usage rate, as Don just pointed out. I think we're not going to see running backs get big second deals. I mean, I think that McCaffrey is going to be the exception, and Dalvin Cook and Josh Jacobs, and name somebody. Everyone else basically is going to be the rule. So most teams, when faced with paying even a very good running back a big second contract, then instead they'll just draft another running back.
Do you think that the Raiders are setting Jimmy G up for failure?
I think orthopedic medicine is setting Jimmy Garoppolo up for failure.
Okay. Dave.
Yeah, what choice does Jacobs have but to sign the tag? It's sign the tag or don't play. And the thing is you know, that $10.9 million, he has $22 million in career earnings. So that's, you know, adding another third to what he's earned. And so I agree with Don that much earlier Don had said sometimes you have to take good money rather than great money. And do you take zero? I don't think that would be a wise move. I don't think his agent would advise that unless he's trying to make some type of a statement. But I look at Le'Veon Bell so many years ago. He did that and he regrets it. And you know, he literally apologized to Pittsburgh and the fans the other day. So I think he should sign it. And I hope he does, because I would hate to see a talented player sitting on the sidelines.
Now, Dave, I've got to change the structure of this whole question here, because I was looking at the Steeler Wire last night before this deal was signed, and it said that Highsmith, even on the Steeler Wire, was shut out of the top 20 edge rushers. This morning, I hear that the Steelers have signed into an extension for what, something like $68 million?
Yep.
For 4 years, right?
Yeah. So let's start out there. What happened overnight, Don? Dave, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I think what it is that Omar Khan he's not playing around, and he's gotten into the mode of signing these players early, getting them committed for 3 or 4 years. So they're looking at his future performance. The Steelers are betting that Alex Highsmith is going to continue on a good trajectory in terms of his performance. And like the top 20 edge rushers, the Steelers don't use that in their evaluations. They might use that in their negotiations, but not in their evaluation.
Okay.
Right? So I think that Alex Highsmith is very, you know, he vocally said he wanted to be a Steeler. Steeler fans like him. Steeler organization likes him. So I think it's a win-win-win all the way around. And you know, hopefully he can continue to his upward trajectory.
I want to ask you a little bit about Aaron Curry. We know that he's a former NFL linebacker who was actually considered a bust, considering how high he was drafted. But now he's a Steeler coach, first-year coach for the Steelers. And he says that he uses his failures to keep him grounded and to help keep the players grounded. Can you tell us a little bit about this first-year coach, Dave?
Yeah, I think, you know, what's happened here is Mike Tomlin sometimes he'll shift the direction. You know, some of his position coaches are guys that have been around 20, 30 years. Other guys are young up-and-comers. And so you had Jerry Olszewski, who was a former Steeler player.
Another former linebacker.
He was inside linebacker coach for about 7 years, I think it was. And unfortunately, his wife passed away 2 Christmases ago. Not this last Christmas, but 2 Christmases ago. And I think that the Steelers decided he needs to take a break. And so then he was not signed to a new contract this year. Brian Flores helped out with the linebackers last year because Jory Olszewski was still in mourning. But then Brian Flores is now the defensive coordinator for the Vikings. And so then rather than going with an experienced guy, they've brought in this young up-and-coming talent. He's Mike Tomlin describes him as very intelligent, very smart, very engaging with the players. And he was a first-round draft pick. And so he, even though he may have been considered a bust, he still has that legacy, that credibility of being a first-round draft pick. He had talent. He did have some injuries. And I think his whole thing, one of the things that players have said about Mike Tomlin and why they like him is how honest Mike Tomlin is with them. He's straight up with them. And with this young man, well, he's not he's 37, 38. He's not 40 yet. But with Curie, he's being honest. Hey, I've learned I made some mistakes. There's things that I could have done better, so I could have had a better career. And so there's that forthrightness that I think is attractive to the Steelers organization. And so it gives a good mix. You have like the Roberts, the tight end coach. He's fairly old, so you got a good mix of seasoned position coaches with these young up-and-coming position coaches, which I think is good for the team.
Okay.
And the thing I'd add there is that there's been a complete transition with the inside linebacker corps. So it's probably an opportune time to make this change because Miles Jack is gone, Devin Bush is gone, Robert Spillane is gone, and they have a whole new set of inside linebackers. So it's a good time to give a young guy a chance to set his mark.
Okay. Bill, Tom Coughlin and Mike Shanahan are among the Hall of Fame semifinalists as the list is trimmed down to 29. Bill, will either, neither, or both make it to the Hall of Fame? And if there's only one, which one has your vote?
Well, I think this time around the answer is neither. I think Shanahan makes it in really soon. I think Coughlin has to wait a little longer. So resume-wise, Shanahan has more wins and I think also a higher percentage of wins. But Coughlin, is a guy that's been a turnaround specialist. We've turned around a franchise in Jacksonville, turned around the Giants when they were rudderless. What helps him is there's a large contingent of fairly young sports writers who sort of grew up admiring him. So I think he does eventually get in. I think Shanahan's wait will soon be over. I don't think it's this year, but I think it's soon. Shanahan is a guy that obviously comes off the Bill Walsh coaching tree, was a terrific assistant coach, gets a chance to show what he can do as a head coach in Denver initially, and wins a lot. Immediately wins a lot, and 2 rings sort of makes you a lock to some extent, for the most part, with NFL coaches. For a long time, that's what it was that sort of was in the craw Raiders fans until finally Flores was addressed. They kept saying he's the only 2-time winning a 2-time winning coach who hadn't made it in. But, of course, Shanahan also is a 2-time winner. But so he's going to get in. Like I said, Coughlin is another guy that I don't think he'll wait that long, though. I think he's in the next I think it'll take him less than 5 years to be inducted. I think Shanahan gets in 2024, probably the next year around, and then I would say probably 2 or 3 years later, Kaufman gets in.
Bill, good having you with us tonight. Why don't you give us your final thoughts, my man?
I will do that. So, on this very day, 101 years ago, July the 19th, a young woman was born, and she was born in relatively, I guess people say the terms, humble-ish circumstances in the black section of Pasadena, California. She went on to go to what they called Manual Arts High School in Los Angeles, and then from there eventually UCLA. She was a nursing student, and while she was there, she met a young man who was a track, basketball, football, and baseball athlete named Jackie Roosevelt Robinson. And she graduated from that same school on June the 5th, 1945, with her bachelor's degree in nursing. And then just a few months later, well, yeah, I guess about a handful of months later, married Jackie Roosevelt Robinson on February 10th, 1946, and started one of the most amazing journeys in American history. Because around that same time, that man I just described also signed a contract to join the AAA franchise, the Montreal Royals, of the AAA franchise, the International League of the Brooklyn Dodgers. And she says some of the happiest times of their marriage was actually living in Montreal. They enjoyed Montreal. They said they were well treated. The people were baseball fans, but not fanatics, unlike Dodgers fans in Brooklyn. She didn't say the unlike Dodgers fans, but that was me. But that people were interested. They enjoyed baseball, but they weren't obsessed with it. And she's done a lot of things. She was a successful person in her own field of study. She went on later to get a master's degree from the Albert Einstein of Medicine and Department of Social and Community Psychiatry. She held a position in psychiatric nursing at New York University Hospital after she got her, which is also where she got her psychiatric master's in psychiatric nursing. She was an assistant professor of nursing at Yale School of Nursing, director of nursing at the Connecticut Mental Health Care Center. All this while she's supporting Jackie Roosevelt Robinson, who sadly died young, at least in part probably due to the stress of what he had to undergo, and so died in 1972. But from that, she incorporated the Jackie Robinson Development Corporation, which was a real estate company that specialized in developing housing for low and moderate income individuals. She founded the Jackie Robinson Foundation, which has sent several thousand minority students to college. And those students who have participated as Jackie Robinson scholars have a 97% on-time college graduation rate. So means that not only do they graduate on time in 4 years, 97% of them. She co-authored Jackie Robinson, an intimate portrait with Lee Daniels in 1996. She has received such awards as the Congressional Gold Medal. She was awarded the UCLA Medal for Lifetime Achievement. She has also received the Candace Award for Distinguished Service from the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, the Equitable Life Black Achievement Award, the Associated Black Charities Black History Makers Award. She's been put into baseball's reliquary Shrine of the Eternals, which is not quite the Hall of Fame. I think they should put her in, but that's a whole other discussion. She also received the Buck O'Neil Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Baseball Hall of Fame. She has done amazing work for her 101 years of life. She is still, from my understanding, is mentally and physically healthy enough to go to the store and shop for herself, get around, things like that. She's not as involved in public life as she was, say, 10 or even 6 years ago, but she does occasionally make public appearances. She doesn't really speak much anymore. She can. She just She's 101. So he's decided to slow down a bit, I guess. But I just wanted to say hats off to Rachel Isom Robinson, one of the most accomplished Americans that we don't talk enough about, a woman who did amazing things and helped her late husband to do one of the most difficult things that any American has had to do in the modern era.
Great thoughts there. Great thoughts, Bill. Don, Tom Coughlin, Mike Shanahan. Both? Neither? Or only one? Who's your vote?
I think both go in. I think Shanahan goes in first, and then Coughlin will be next.
Okay. Your final thoughts, Don?
Oh, my final thoughts. Well, I'm back from vacation. I finally did Disneyland.
Huh.
I got to see the Reagan Library Museum. That's beautiful on top of a hill.
Santa Clara, right? Is it Santa Clara?
It's in Simi something.
I thought it was in Yorba Linda. Is it not in Yorba Linda?
No.
San Clemente's Nixon Library, right?
San Clemente
San
Nixon.
Clemente
Yeah.
is Nixon.
But anyway, I got to actually drive through Los Angeles. Yeah. So that's not my final thought. My final thought, I'm going to talk about a little bit about baseball. One of the most outstanding players to ever play at the University of Texas is a young man named Ivan Melendez. He's known as the Hispanic Titanic. That's his nickname. So you'll be hearing about him. He just got promoted to Double-A ball. As of last night, he's had 10 at-bats. He's starting third baseman. He's had 10 at-bats. In those 10 at-bats, he's had 4 home runs, one which he smashed over the Amarillo ballpark scoreboard, and he had a single. So 10 at-bats, 5 hits, 4 of which are home runs. You'll be hearing about this young man in the coming years. It's only a matter of time before he goes to the big show. So that's Ivan Melendez, former UT Longhorn, the Hispanic Titanic. And that's my final thoughts.
All right, Don. We'll see you next week, my man. You have a great week. And Dave, what's your thoughts here? Todd Coughlin, Mike Shanahan?
Well, they've both won 2 Super Bowls, and that's pretty big. I think in the case of Coughlin beating New England twice, and I believe that they were underdogs both times.
Yep.
And I see him getting in. Maybe not this year, but at some point. Shanahan did 2 Super Bowls with John Elway. But Shanahan, he bugs me a little bit. I really think about RG3 and the year that they went to the playoffs when I got to see them play in Pittsburgh. The Redskins, or the Washington franchise, whatever you want to call them. They came to Pittsburgh. I saw the game. And they had RG3 go out on an option pass as a receiver against Ike Taylor. And Ike Taylor, this is their franchise. And Ike Taylor just lit him up. Incomplete pass. And on top of that, RG3, because he's not a receiver, was called for offensive pass interference, which was declined because it was a 3rd down play. But the Pittsburgh fans weren't cheering. They were stunned. Why would a coach do that to their franchise quarterback?
Because he didn't like him.
And then what happened later on, RG3 was hurt in the playoffs. They lost the playoff game. He played when he was obviously hobbling around. And Mike Shanahan threw him under the bus saying, well, he wanted to play. Wait a minute. You're the coach. You prevent him from playing. And other coaches have done that, like Mike Tomlin did with the guy with the sickle cell anemia, Ryan Clark in Denver. He wanted to play. Mike Tomlin said no. He put his foot down. And Ryan Clark came in with his doctors. I got clearance. I can play. Mike Tomlin said no because I wouldn't let my son play in those circumstances. So Shanahan will get in, but I'm not a fan. You can kind of guess.
Final thoughts, Dave.
Well, I got back from my vacation a week and a half ago from a Danube River cruise, and I got to meet a lot of people on this cruise. We were in Hungary, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Austria, but particularly the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. Some of our guides, they remembered what it was like under socialist rule, under the communist rule. And uniformly, just in their side remarks, they commented on how much they appreciated the United States and their role in helping them become free. And that impacted me. They didn't have to say it. That they did. And this one woman in particular, she was saying how, when they first got free, well, she didn't have a passport. They weren't allowed to travel. And they just went to the checkpoint, the Austrian checkpoint, because they were near the border, and just gave a piece of paper so that he would stamp it. And they kept on going back. They weren't entering Austria, but they were getting that stamp to show that, hey, I've just interacted with another country, and it meant a lot. But then there was also some crew members, or passengers on the riverboat. One gentleman from China, he came to the United States 38 years ago, didn't speak any English. He was an engineer. His first job was in Topeka, Kansas, as a bus boy. And he said, and I'm saying, you were an engineer and you're working as a bus boy? He goes, well, because I didn't have to talk. It's easy to do your job. You didn't have to communicate. 38 years later, he owns a restaurant in San Antonio, Texas, Chinese restaurant, I guess, in San Antonio, Texas. Very proud to be an American. And he said, his children, they don't understand what it is to live under those conditions where the government is just directing what you do, what your businesses do, and how much he appreciates the United States. The last couple I'll mention, Alex and his wife. Alex is originally from St. Petersburg, Russia. His wife is from Kiev. So married couple, a Russian and a Ukrainian. They live outside of Chicago. They came here about 25, 30 years ago. And they were saying, they just didn't have the opportunities where they were at. And they're a little bit older, and they remember what it was like to live under the Soviet regime. And they said, all we wanted to do is to come to America, and they finally did. Even after the fall of the Soviet Union, they still wanted to leave Russia and the Ukraine. They wanted no parts of it. And they expressed their appreciation of coming to the United States and being brought in as Americans. And so I just, for my final thought, it made me feel very good, because so many times in the United States has its flaws, but it was really nice to hear all these different people from different backgrounds saying how much they appreciate the United States and what it's done and what it means to them. So that's my final thought for tonight.
Hey guys, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. Appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody, and look forward to talking to everyone next week.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.
See y'all next week.
See you next week.